She accepted the unwanted role in a millionaire's isolated mansion, discovering an amazing heart within. Sarah stared at the sprawling mansion, its grandiose facade looming over her like an untouchable dream. The whispers of her friends echoed in her ears. "You really took that job?" They didn't understand. She was a single mom working nights at the diner, scraping by on tips and the low pay of her daily grind. Money was tight, and her kids, Ryan and little Emma, deserved better. When the job offer to care for Jonathan, the reclusive millionaire, came through, it felt like a lifeline. But the sheer opulence of this mansion only reminded her of the rags-to-riches gap that society still clung to. Taking a deep breath, she climbed the steps that seemed to reach for the sky. The heavy wooden door creaked open, as if resisting her entry. Inside, the air was thick with silence, broken only by the echo of her footsteps on marble floors. Sunlight filtered through towering stained glass, casting colorful patterns that danced across the walls, but there was a chill, an emptiness. Jonathan lived here, yet it felt devoid of life. Though her home was a modest two-bedroom apartment filled with messy toys and unfinished homework, the stark contrast unsettled her. She felt small. The ornate details and lavish decor whispered of wealth, but they masked a loneliness that tugged at her heart. She set her things down, already feeling the weight of judgment from the elite neighbors who would undoubtedly look down on her, a waitress among the wealthy, wondering how someone like her had stepped into their world. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the first few tasks fell into her lap, organizing Jonathan's belongings and preparing meals, she saw glimpses of the man behind the facade. He was broken, haunted by the ghosts of war and shadows of loss. The misunderstood millionaire drank alone in silence, hiding from the world outside. Each encounter, he seemed more a puzzle than a person, and it ignited a fire within Sarah. She understood struggle. Her father had taught her to fight for dignity, even when the universe tried to take it away. Amid the whispers from her community back home, those who couldn't fathom why she'd involve herself with someone like Jonathan, she felt torn. Their judgment stung. She had a choice: retreat into the safety of her old life, or risk everything, advocating for Jonathan and hope for her children's future. But as she witnessed his pain, so closely, something shifted. She remembered her father's words: "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's fighting through it." With steely resolve swelling in her chest, Sarah knew uncertainty was part of this journey. Would fighting for a friendship, for healing, be worth the backlash? She was standing at the fork in the road, heart pounding with a single question. Was she brave enough to champion someone who had been left behind, to unveil the man beneath the wealth? As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the mansion's dark corners, Sarah took a deep breath. The path ahead loomed as the choice flickered like a candle flame. Would she bring light where shadows loomed, or would she let fear dim her passion? The answer waited just around the corner, but one thing was clear: everything was about to change. Each day that passed in the mansion, the weight of silence became louder. Sarah moved with purpose, filling the void with tasks that kept her busy. But there was another kind of work brewing beneath the surface, an unspoken desire to reach Jonathan, to break through the walls he had erected. She watched him from the corner of her eye, catching glimpses of a man trapped in memories, shadows of laughter long extinguished flitting across his face. These brief moments, though fleeting, ignited something in her, a warmth that compelled her to act. One morning, after preparing a simple breakfast of eggs and toast, Sarah decided to do something bold. She placed a bright yellow flower in a vase, its vibrant color a striking contrast to the monotony that surrounded them. She set it on the table where Jonathan usually sat, hoping it might draw him out. As she arranged it, she felt a flutter in her chest, a pulse of hope coursing through her veins. Would he notice? Would it coax even a flicker of a smile from his lips? When Jonathan entered the room, his eyes first landed on the untouched meal, then drifted slowly to the flower's cheerful bloom. For a moment, she searched his expression, holding her breath. The corners of his mouth twitched upward as he knelt closer, studying the petals like a child examining a new discovery. "It's lovely," he finally said, a gruffness in his voice that almost sounded like emotion. "Just thought it could brighten up the place," Sarah replied lightly, maintaining his gaze. "Everything feels so heavy here." Jonathan observed her as if she were a puzzle piece he struggled to fit into his life, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. It's easy to forget beauty exists without seeking it. Sarah felt a twinge of pride at his acknowledgement. Maybe all we need is a little reminder. Those words hung between them, bridging a gap that had felt insurmountable just days before. Days rolled on, and Sarah found herself opening more, sharing bits of her life, her children's laughter, the joy she felt when Ryan scored a goal in soccer, and the way Emma's big eyes lit up when she found a ladybug. She painted vivid images using her words, pulling Jonathan into her world, willing him to see that life outside held beauty too, away from the mansion's cold trappings. With every story, she noticed moments where Jonathan softened, his eyes brightening and laughter bubbling beneath. But with each small victory, the shadows of her own world loomed. Ryan and Emma needed her. Despite her growing feelings for Jonathan, the weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her heart, a constant reminder of the life she had to return to. Would her children understand how important this connection had become for her? Would they see it as another distraction, another person she was trying to save? One evening, as dusk settled, Sarah stood in the kitchen flipping through a recipe book, her mind racing with thoughts of Jonathan's growing strength and her children's needs. Suddenly, the sharp ring of the doorbell jolted her. A staff member from the mansion had arrived, and she could sense the impending change in circumstances. News from Jonathan's family was coming, and Sarah held her breath. What would they want? And worse yet, how would Jonathan react? Would he retreat back into darkness? Or had their shared moments forged a bond strong enough to face whatever storm approached? With her heart pounding like a drum, Sarah realized she was about to discover just how far she was willing to go, to fight for not only Jonathan, but for the flame of connection they had ignited together. But would it hold in the face of the challenges ahead? Only time would tell as she braced herself for the unraveling that was about to begin. As the door swung open, Sarah felt a chill creep through the room. A woman stood there, sharp and composed, with an air that demanded attention. "You must be Sarah," she said, her voice cool and clipped. "I'm Margaret, Jonathan's sister." The name hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. She had anticipated family involvement, but the reality felt like a jolt of electricity, leaving her momentarily speechless. Margaret stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the kitchen with a discerning eye. "Where is he?" she asked, as if the answer mattered for more than just courtesy's sake. He's..." Sarah hesitated. Would Jonathan want to see her? There was so much unspoken between them. "He's in the library." Margaret nodded, seemingly unfazed by Sarah's uncertainty. She crossed the room with purpose, heels clicking against the polished floor. Sarah watched her go, her heart racing. Would Margaret's presence sever the fragile connection she had built with Jonathan? Taking a deep breath, Sarah trailed behind Margaret, her mind racing with the possibilities. Jonathan might retreat into himself again, locked behind walls that could threaten to crumble their newfound bond. She had to prepare him somehow. As they entered the library, Jonathan looked up from a book, surprise flickering across his face. The moment hung in the air, thick with tension. Sarah noticed the way his jaw tightened at the sight of his sister, and the warmth that had blossomed between them felt desperately fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a table. "Margaret," he said, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "Jonathan," she replied, her tone leveled, as if they were discussing nothing more than the weather. "We need to talk." Jonathan's eyes darted to Sarah, seeking solace. He could easily retreat into the familiar shadows of isolation, but Sarah hoped he wouldn't. She cleared her throat, stepping forward. I'll step out for a moment," she offered, her heart sinking. "No," Jonathan said quickly, his gaze locking onto hers. "Please stay." There was a desperation in his tone that resonated deep within Sarah. Margaret's eyes narrowed at Jonathan's plea, but he stood firm. "Sarah has been helpful," he added, his voice taking on an unexpected warmth. The air shifted, and Sarah could feel Margaret's disapproval. "Helpful?" she echoed with a note of disbelief. "You're not a charity case, Jonathan." Jonathan bristled at the remark. "I know that," he snapped, revealing a flash of the strength Sarah had come to recognize in him. "It's not like that. You don't understand what this place has done to me, what losing family meant." He trailed off, emotional turbulence brewing just below the surface. Margaret's expression faltered for just a second. "Then we need to talk about how to move forward, Jonathan. You can't hide forever," she urged, her voice softening momentarily. Watching them, Sarah felt a surge of protectiveness for Jonathan. This was his moment to reclaim his life, to take a step towards a different future. But could he? The push and pull of loyalty and survival weighed heavy in the small space. As Margaret's words hung ominously in the air, Jonathan squared his shoulders, his eyes glancing back to Sarah, seeking support, a lifeline in the storm ahead. "Sarah, I need to know you're with me," he said, vulnerability spilling from him like a fragile promise. What might happen next felt like the most critical juncture in their journey. Would they be able to confront his past and face the truth? And what secrets did Margaret carry that could damage everything Sarah had fought to build? Only time, and the answers ahead, would reveal what the next chapter would hold. Jonathan's eyes held a mixture of fear and hope as he looked at Sarah. The weight of Margaret's presence and the tension hanging in the room felt oppressive. It was as if the walls themselves had ears and were listening intently to this delicate moment. "I'm with you," Sarah replied, her voice steady, even as her heart thundered in her chest. "No matter what she says, I won't go." Margaret shot her a scrutinizing look, as if trying to unravel every thread of their bond. "You don't know what you're getting into," she warned, her voice slicing through the charged atmosphere. "This isn't about you, Sarah. It's about Jonathan facing reality." Jonathan turned. "And hiding is the answer? Because that's all you've done since Mom died." His tone was sharp, echoing off the bookshelves packed with dust-covered novels, a reminder of the past neither could escape. Margaret stepped forward, her composure faltering for a heartbeat. "I've been trying to protect us, to keep the family together. You think I wanted this?" The fight in Jonathan ignited a spark of determination within Sarah. The family isn't just about blood. It's about feeling connected, and right now it seems like you're both choking on your pain instead of facing it. She realized the brave choice she made to speak up, her throat dry and her palms clammy. Margaret's gaze turned sharp, but Jonathan's softened, almost the way it had the first night they met. "Maybe she's right," he said quietly, but firmly. "Maybe I need to start feeling again." "Feeling means confronting everything you've buried," Margaret replied, crossing her arms. The tension thickened like fog, wrapping around each word spoken. "Then let's confront it together," Jonathan urged, pushing past the unease in the air. "I don't want to hide anymore. Sarah has given me perspective. Margaret cut him off. "What a pity that you've come to rely on a stranger." In that moment, something inside Sarah snapped. "I'm not just a stranger, Margaret. I'm here because I care about Jonathan. You can't keep trying to control every narrative." A blink of surprise flashed across Margaret's face, as if she was finally viewing Sarah as more than an interloper. For a split second, the room was still. Jonathan took a deep breath, the sound almost jagged as he looked between the women in his life, his sister and the woman who had entered his world in a way he'd never expected. Maybe this isn't just a family matter anymore. Maybe I need to decide who I want in my life. Margaret stepped back slightly, taken off guard. You want to turn your back on your own flesh and blood? No, I want to reclaim my life, Jonathan stated firmly. The silence felt deafening. Sarah watched the wheels turn in Jonathan's mind, praying he would choose her. She wanted to show him that family isn't always defined by shared blood. Sometimes it's the connections forged through understanding and care. Margaret's expression hardened, but the glimmer of concern in her eyes betrayed her. "Fine," she said finally. "If you want to speak of new beginnings, then let's address the elephant in the room. What really happened to Dad?" Jonathan's face paled, the storm of emotions crashing into him like waves against the shore. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. As Margaret leaned closer, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically, like the air before an incoming storm. "I found something," she said, eyes locking onto Jonathan's, "something that might change everything." Sarah's heart raced at Margaret's revelation, a mix of dread and curiosity washing over her. What could this mean for Jonathan, for them all? Dread settled in her stomach like a stone as she braced herself for whatever was to come. Each moment, like ticking clockwork, carried weight and urgency. What truth lurked beneath, ready to surface? Would it bring them closer or tear them apart? The air crackled with anticipation, holding secrets tight in its grip, waiting for the right moment to explode. Margaret's intensity hung in the air, thick and unsettling. Jonathan's expression was a storm of confusion, one moment displaying hope, the next uncertainty. The air felt charged, prickling at Sarah's skin as she tried to gauge every shift in Jonathan's demeanor. "What do you mean by that?" Jonathan finally asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. His eyes searched Margaret's face for the answer he feared. Holding her breath, Sarah stepped forward slightly, ready to support Jonathan, to stand strong beside him. She felt every heartbeat, her own and the weight of his, as if they were the only two souls navigating this tangled web of family secrets. Margaret paused, her fingers nervously twisting a strand of her hair, a gesture that was uncharacteristic for her. "It's a letter," she confessed, glancing down as if ashamed. A letter addressed to him. She gestured toward Jonathan, the weight of her words hanging heavily between them. "From Dad?" Jonathan's voice cracked at the question, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "She found it in one of his old books," Sarah interjected gently, hoping to keep the enormity of the situation from overwhelming Jonathan entirely. "A letter he never sent." The words tumbled out before she could stop herself, the realization of their implications settling deep within her. Margaret looked at her, a flash of appreciation mixed with disbelief. "Yes, I thought it was something worth revisiting now that you're ready to face the truth." She lifted the letter hesitantly from her pocket, its edges worn, stained with age, and possibly emotion. "Read it," Jonathan urged, his voice barely above a murmur. The air thickened again, the three of them locked into that moment, worry swirling in their thoughts like a cyclone. Margaret drew in a deep breath before unfolding the letter, her hands trembling as she read aloud. "It says," she began, her voice steady despite the thunder of emotions whirling around them, "Dear Jonathan, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to guide you. There are truths about our family I couldn't bear to tell you then, but they matter now." Sarah's heart ached as each line unfolded, knowing this was Jonathan's father speaking from a past that felt hauntingly present. These were words supposed to bring closure, but could very well unleash a torrent of buried pain. Jonathan's expression shifted, horror, sadness, and curiosity battling for dominance. "What did he keep from us?" he whispered, almost to himself. "Let me finish," Margaret pressed on, her voice trailing with uncertainty, as if the words weighed like lead. To comfort him, but words felt inadequate for the tempest that raged inside him. Jonathan's hands went to his temples, as if trying to hold his head together. "My mother?" he echoed, disbelief squeezing his heart. Margaret stammered. He loved her, but felt unable to stay, to be the father you needed. He thought leaving would protect you both from more pain. But he was wrong. There were things he couldn't deal with, things he hid away, pushing you into a world of lies. Jonathan's breath quickened. "So we were living a lie this entire time? I can't even trust the memories I have. They were all based on what? A farce?" "No, Jonathan, it's still your past," Sarah interjected, her voice gentle yet firm. "And while it might be stained, it's still real. You have the power to shape how those memories fit into your life now. This isn't just about what he did or didn't do. It's about you taking control of your story." His eyes darted between Margaret and Sarah, the turmoil within him palpable. There was a flicker of rage, but also the tiniest spark of hope in the storm. "You really think I can just navigate through this? What do I even do with this information?" Margaret wiped the tears from her cheeks. I think we face it together. We can't change the past, but we can move forward. We're still family. We need each other." His body visibly relaxed, just a fraction, but it was enough for Sarah to sense the shift. The walls they built were beginning to tremble. "Together?" Jonathan questioned, the word heavy on his tongue. "Yes," Margaret affirmed, her tone stronger. "What other choice do we have? This is our chance to retake our narrative, to reclaim our truth, no matter how ugly it is." Their gazes locked, and in that moment, the raw vulnerability transformed into resolve. Amidst the heartache, the possibility of understanding bloomed like a budding flower in a desolate landscape. "You promise?" Jonathan's voice was hoarse, searching for assurance. "I promise," Margaret replied, her hand reaching for his. As their fingers intertwined, a tidal wave of relief washed over Sarah. It was still fragile, their connection, a budding seed of reconciliation that needed nurturing. But the weight of the letter still lingered, and with it, unanswered questions clawed at the edges of their minds. Could they truly heal from the wounds of the past? A shadow loomed over them, a foreboding sense of reckoning. What would happen when the shadows of their mother's suffering, the hidden betrayals, and their father's choices finally came to light? In that still, charged air, they held on to the glimmer of hope, yet uncertainty loomed larger than their newfound courage. Just then, the door creaked open, revealing a figure from the past that none of them expected, a face that would change everything they thought they knew. The door swung wide, and in the fading light of the room, a familiar silhouette stepped inside. It was Caroline, their mother's estranged sister. Her presence seemed to suck the air from the room. A ghost returned to haunt them. "Margaret, Jonathan." Her voice was soft, yet laced with an urgency that belied her calm exterior. She looked older, with lines etched deep around her eyes, but they were still the same eyes that used to beam with laughter during family gatherings long ago, now clouded with unshed tears. "What are you doing here?" Margaret asked, her voice steadying, but the tremor betrayed her anxiety. "I heard about your father, his letter." Caroline's gaze flickered to where the letter lay crumpled on the table, a reminder of all that had been buried. "I came because I know the truth, the parts he didn't tell you." Jonathan shifted, his heart racing. Did she mean the darkness? Was there more to their family's secret than even Margaret knew? "What truth?" he managed to ask, fear curling in his stomach. Caroline hesitated, casting glances at both of them as if weighing their reactions. "Your mother. She was not the woman you remember. She fought battles no one knew about. The pain she felt was rooted deeper than you can imagine." Margaret's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" Desperation seeped into her voice as she leaned forward, craving answers like a parched traveler in a desert. "After your father left, she became someone else, lost in her grief," Caroline said, voice breaking slightly. "I tried to help her, to bring her back, but she kept pushing me away. There were nights, dark nights, where she couldn't escape the shadows of their past. It changed her. Jonathan felt a churning in his gut. He had only known his mother as a strong, albeit distant figure. Is that what you believe he was protecting us from? Her darkness? Caroline looked at him, sadness cutting through her like a knife. No, Jonathan, your father left because he couldn't handle it. He thought distancing himself would shield you. But what it really did was leave a void. The real darkness was his choice to abandon you. Your mother wasn't the issue. It was his fear driving his decisions. The revelation hung heavily in the air, settling into the crevices of their hearts. Every newly unveiled truth was a pin that pricked at their old wounds, forcing them to bleed anew. Margaret's heart raced. So all along, we were told it was her fault for being, for suffering? Her fingers tightened around Jonathan's, half for support, half for grounding. We've been wandering in his shadow, Jonathan muttered, the realization dawning like the first light breaking over a dark horizon. He held on to his secrets so tightly that they suffocated us. Caroline, sensing their awakening, stepped closer. Yes, you need to understand what was taken from you, but more importantly, you need to know that you are not defined by your family's pain. You are stronger than that. Together, you can confront it, heal. As her words settled in, Sarah felt like the walls of their home, once so imposing, were now coming down. There was a flicker of warmth amidst the chaos, a glow emerging as the pieces began to fall into place. Yet before they could embrace the new hope, a loud crashing sound echoed from the hallway. It shattered the moment, like glass breaking underfoot. "Stay here," Margaret ordered instinctively. Panic surged through her veins as they turned towards the noise, hearts pounding. What now? The uncertainty gripped them, forcing them to confront whatever upheaval awaited just beyond the door. Each of them held their breath, the possibilities swirling like the dust in the air. What had come to disturb their fragile moment of renewal? Would the arrival of more truths bind them together or tear them apart? The door burst open, and a figure stumbled into the room, eyes wide with panic. It was Jason, their childhood friend, his hair disheveled and clothes stained. He looked as if he had just run a marathon. "Margaret! Jonathan!" he shouted, breathless. The urgency in his voice brought a new tension to the air. "You need to come quick. There's something going on outside." "What do you mean?" Jonathan stepped forward, instinct taking over. The fear that had gripped them moments ago morphed into a different kind of anxiety. What's happening? "There's been an accident," Jason panted, raising his hands in a frantic gesture. "A car crashed right by the edge of the woods. There's smoke, and someone's trapped inside." Margaret felt her stomach drop. "Who? Do you know?" Jason shook his head. "I didn't see who it was, but they need help. I thought I'd stop here first to get you two, but you have to hurry." Grabbing Jonathan's wrist, Margaret didn't think twice. "Let's go," she said, her voice firm. The frail warmth they had just begun to feel melted away, replaced by a racing heartbeat and adrenaline. They rushed out the door, Jason leading the way. The chill of the evening air hit them, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere inside. The distant sound of sirens wailed like a banshee, foreboding and urgent. As they plunged into the shadows of the woods, Margaret's mind raced. Who could it be? Anxiety gnawed at her insides. Was this more of the disruption they were meant to face? Hadn't they dealt with enough revelations? Jonathan's presence beside her was a steadying force, but she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on her shoulders. They reached the clearing where the remnants of the car lay mangled, smoke curling into the darkening sky. It looked like a scene from a nightmare, and Margaret couldn't shake the heavy feeling in her chest. "Stay back! Everyone, stay back!" shouted a firefighter, motioning people away from the scene. Margaret strained to see who was inside. The silhouette of a person loomed in the wreckage, and dread washed over her. Was this someone they would know? A sense of impending tragedy wrapped around them like a cloak, suffocating yet impossible to ignore. Jonathan stepped forward, determined. He turned to Margaret, his eyes filling with conviction. "We can't just stand here. We need to help." Before Margaret could respond, Jason echoed his sentiments. "We need to call for more help." But then they saw it. The figure inside the car began to stir, their face becoming visible through the shattered glass. A rush of recognition surged through Margaret, ripping away the fresh bandage from her emotions. No, it couldn't be. Her breath caught as she took a step closer. No, it can't be them. The clouds shifted above them, casting flares of lightning across the horizon, and in that flickering light, the familiarity of the face became clearer. "How could this happen?" Jonathan whispered, face paling. Margaret's heart pounded as horror settled in her chest. They were about to confront another truth, one she hadn't been prepared for, and suddenly all the pieces of their family's puzzle began to fracture anew. "Margaret," Jonathan said, eyes wide with shared fear, "what do we do now?" As urgency exploded in her mind, her heart ached with an overwhelming mix of dread and necessity. She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself against the tempest of emotions swirling around. "Whatever happens next," she said, determined but visibly shaken, "we face it together. We have to be strong, no matter what the truth reveals." Just then, a scream pierced the night, cutting through their resolve. What had they just taken on? And could they truly handle this moment of reckoning as well? Margaret's heart thundered in her chest as the scream echoed in the air. It wasn't just a noise. It was a cry filled with anguish that sliced through the gathering darkness. She could feel the weight of panic pressing down on her, threatening to crush any shred of hope left inside. "Margaret," Jonathan's voice pulled her back. He was glued to the spot, fear rooted in his eyes. The flames flickered menacingly, casting shadows that danced chaotically. She glanced back at the firefighter, who was shouting commands. "Get back! We need to air out the area." "No, we can't just stand here," Jonathan snapped, his voice rising with urgency. He wasn't about to let fear paralyze them now. "We have to help." Jason took a hesitant step toward the blaze, his face pale but defiant. "If it is someone we know, we can't abandon them." Margaret felt torn. Every instinct screamed at her to run for cover, to distance herself from the terrifying scene unfolding before her. But the blood in her veins told her she had to stay. They had faced darkness before. This was just another challenge. As they moved closer, the reality of the situation loomed larger, suffocating them with its intensity. The billowing smoke curled like fingers reaching out to them, and the air thickened with despair. The overturned vehicle was a twisted mass, a dream turned nightmare. "Can you see who it is?" Jonathan shouted over the chaos. Margaret squinted, straining for clarity amidst the smoke. She didn't want to believe what she saw. But the familiar features emerged like a phantom from her past, soft, kind eyes framed by the fiery glow of the flames. It was Sarah. "No, it can't be," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Jonathan's arms tightened around her shoulders, his eyes widened in horror. "We have to do something. We can't leave her." Margaret nodded, determination igniting in her core. "We need to call for the fire department. They've got to get her out." But just as she turned to grab her phone, the piercing cry came again, a heart-wrenching wail that echoed out into the night. It was Sarah calling for help, and it shattered any resolve they had left. "Help! Please, someone!" Jason shifted restlessly. "I'll go. I'll help her." Before they could stop him, he sprinted forward, fear and bravery charging his every move. "Jason, wait!" Jonathan yelled, but it was too late. Jason vanished into the haze. Margaret felt faint, her heart pounding in her ears. "What are we going to do?" "Nothing. Just stay put. We need to stay back. Let the professionals handle it," Jonathan said fiercely, holding her steady. But Margaret could see Jason now, scrambling toward the car, hands reaching for Sarah. Each second stretched painfully as the flames roared, licking the edges of the wreckage. Fear clawed at her throat, a bitter reminder of how life could change in an instant. "I can't watch this. I won't," she groaned, emotion choking her voice. Just then, the firefighter shouted, "Get back, we're going in." Margaret held her breath. Her heart raced. She could hardly distinguish the sounds of sirens now, nothing but the chaos of flames and cries. "We're losing them," another voice shouted nearby, igniting a frenzy. Margaret squeezed her eyes shut, a prayer whispering in her mind. They had already faced so much. Could they bear another loss? In that heart-stopping moment, she felt Jonathan's hand squeeze hers tightly, grounding her, reminding her that they weren't alone. But they had to act, and a decision loomed. The moment of truth was here. They could either stay and risk everything, or venture into the wreckage and try to save someone they loved. And then, as the first firefighter dashed into the smoke, came the question that seared through her mind. What if it was already too late? "Margaret, we can't wait," Jonathan's steady voice pierced her thoughts. A decision was forming, and she could no longer deny what she must do. Could she muster the strength to move forward? And if they dove into this unknown, what truth would they uncover about themselves? With a trembling nod, she turned to face the blaze, heart racing. Whatever awaited her in that darkness would change everything, including their definition of family. The world spun around Sarah as she remained trapped inside the twisted metal of the wrecked car. The smoke thickened, invading her lungs with each desperate breath. She fought against the panic rising within her. She needed to stay calm. Outside, chaos ensued as sirens wailed and people shouted in urgency. "Help, please, someone," she cried again, her voice cracking with fear. Despite the struggle to keep her tears at bay, the sharp reality of her situation became painfully clear, bearing down on her like a heavy weight. Moments felt like hours as time stretched, the sounds of the world beyond slipping in and out of focus. Jason's presence eased her anxiety momentarily. She could see him approaching through the haze, his eyes wide with determination. "Hold on, Sarah, I'm coming," he shouted, pushing closer despite the heat. The flames licked at the edges of the crumpled metal, and Sarah whimpered, the fire's hungry growl sending shivers down her spine. She felt trapped not just by the wreckage, but by her choices, her past, and the looming uncertainty of how she had come to this moment. It was supposed to be a day of healing, a day of forging new connections. Not this. Suddenly, the sound of a firefighter's voice broke through the noise. "We're going to get you out. Stay still," the deep voice echoed, accompanied by the rush of movement as they began to work on the door, trying to pry it open. "Stay with me, Sarah," Jason urged, crouching beside the vehicle. His voice penetrated the chaos, anchoring her. Was this really happening? Was she truly surrounded by the darkness she had been fighting to escape? As the echoes of her life rushed through her mind, moments of joy and laughter with Ryan and Emma, the warmth of the sun on her face during shared memories, her hope for the future, she felt that old flame of determination spark again. She was not ready to succumb to despair. With a grunt, the firefighter managed to force the door ajar. "Get back," he commanded as he shoved Jason out of the way. "We need to get her now." Adrenaline pumped through Sarah as the smoke began to clear. The firefighter's face loomed above her, a silhouette of authority and hope. Strong arms reached in, pulling her away from the wreckage, ushering her back into the cool air. "Hang on," he urged, pulling her through the twisted metal. Freedom was within reach, but fear threatened to swallow her whole. Suddenly, she felt someone's hand slip into hers, Jonathan's. His eyes wide with worry, filled with a fierce protectiveness she hadn't realized she needed so desperately until this moment. "You're okay, Sarah. I'm here. You're safe," he whispered softly as he supported her weight. The weight of everything she had faced, the hardship, the shadows of their families, her own fears, felt lighter, as if the act of reaching towards him unleashed a tide of resilience. Jonathan's gaze shone with fierce determination, a beacon guiding her back to life. Together, they stepped away from The wrecked car, the heat of the flames fading, and being replaced by the relief of reality. Around them, chaos swirled, but their newfound strength held firm. "You did it!" Jason exclaimed, pumping his fist in the air. He rushed to them, relief flooding his features as he hugged Sarah tightly for a brief moment. But amidst the commotion, Margaret rushed forward, her face pale but her voice steady. "What happened? Are you okay?" She enveloped Sarah in her arms, a protective hug wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Sarah gasped, clearing her throat. "I'm okay, thanks to Jason and the firefighters." She looked back at the wreckage, the realization dawning upon her. They had faced traumatic truths, but now they were also being offered the chance to rewrite their story. The events had shaken them, but the love they shared, the ties that bound them, not only survived, but flourished through the adversity. Margaret gasped, "We've all been through too much to turn back now. This is a new beginning, but we need to stick together. It's about time we shatter the illusions our family has built." Jonathan's hand tightened around Sarah's, a shared vow of solidarity. "Together," he echoed, his voice ringing with conviction. "We will heal. We can rewrite our narrative, one with honesty, love, and the freedom to choose." They stood together, united against the shadows of the past. Each one of them had faced their fears. Each had discovered the strength they never knew existed. As tears of relief streamed down Sarah's face, she realized how far they had all come. "What do you say we make a fresh start, for us?" Jason suggested, laughter lacing his words, bringing relief to the heavy atmosphere. "Definitely," Sarah replied, her heart swelling. "We're not defined by our family's mistakes. We are what we choose to become." Together, they turned towards the rising sun, ready to embrace the future with arms wide open. Every day would be a choice, every moment a chance to grow, a new family forged not by blood, but by resilience and shared strength. As they walked forward into the warmth of the dawn, uncertainty may still linger, but so did hope, love, and the promise of unbreakable bonds. They chose to move onward, hand in hand, ready to reshape their destinies. This was the moment, the chance to shine bright and break free from the past. And you, reader, have your own story waiting to be told. So subscribe now to the channel to ensure you never miss an exclusive story. Leave a like to fuel the algorithm and help others find these tales of transformation. Comment below and share your feelings about this ending. And don't wait, not even one more second, to share this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration and hope. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the journey. Your actions can spark change.